Hey man, how's the new job?
Ugh, it's terrible.
Oh? How come?
I have to work with all these damn kids.
Well, how bad is it?
It sucks.
Well, why don't you tell me about that?
Terrible. All they do is complain and whine.
Oh, well maybe you have...
They don't stop and listen to anything I say.
But what if...
You know, I just wish they could get a little bit of perspective. I mean, really, how hard is it to stop and pause to understand another person? I mean, hello, I'm a person too. I swear, kids are just... Kids. Children, little pockets of innocence that haven't yet been destroyed by the failings of the world around them. Always attempting to do their best, but maybe not quite hitting the mark, but it's alright because, you know, they were trying their best. Which is fine. Because in all honesty, I love child characters, and I think they have a bad reputation. Mostly born from child characters being used as a plot device, or being written by someone who clearly hasn't interacted with children to know how they speak and act, and the times they are given an open floor for exploration, it's only when they're interacting with other child characters, so I feel like a lot of people dislike the kids because they're so one-note or annoying or whatever reason. But despite this reputation, people write about kids a lot. I just got done playing the final season of Telltale's The Walking Dead, which is all about a settlement of kids. The 80s, which is almost a facet of fiction now, has big names like Stranger Things and It with all-children casts. And hell, even Catcher in the Rye, one of the most infamous books, is all about a teenager going through puberty. So why kids? Why do we spend so much time writing about little kids? What makes a good child character versus a bad one? Well, to understand that, I think we need to take a second to understand the complexities of being a child. Because the way I see it, being a kid sucks. Your body's shape and hormones are always fluctuating, your brain isn't physically developed enough to properly manage all the feelings inside you, and that's just speaking anatomically. Mentally, a child's just beginning to learn and discover their sense of self, while also having no agency to act on their discovery. I've talked on this channel before about how being an android is having thoughts and opinions, but no agency to act on them, which, yeah, that's just being a kid. So yeah, that's complex. Being a kid is more complicated and interesting than just being symbolic for innocence, acting as change for an adult, or just bringing the plot where it needs to go. And I think a good example of all this is in Stephen King's It, a story about a bunch of children forced into fighting Pennywise, an evil they can't quite comprehend yet. And the various forms Pennywise takes is tailored to fear of each of the children. And much of the plot is these kids being mortified and trying to run and tell like bystanders or adults or parents, and them just not believing them or just being dismissed. Bill, the protagonist, keeps seeing his brother Georgie because he blames himself for not protecting his brother. And even after all the diagrams and rather logical sense he makes, his father yells at him saying he's gone. Eddie is mortified of being sick, a fear that his mother fuels to keep him ignorant, and when he begins to question that, he's thrown in his room and blocked off from the friends. And Mike, in the opening scene of the film, is told to grow up and face the realities of the farm. These are good children characters. Each one of them is facing the hypocrisy of growing up and attempting to become knowledgeable, but at the same time, all these forces around them trying to mold them into something different from how they perceive themselves. It's a whole different layer to the horror of the film, and it could only really be done with children, because children are so impressionable, yet inquisitive because of the state they're in, combined with how people treat them. And for a point of comparison, we can look at how even objectively good media treats children, with a game like Silent Hill 2. The game features the child character Laura, who is just awful. Her placement is so weird, it doesn't really meld with the story, her ending in the game is too generic and weird. She only really works as a metaphor for James, our protagonist, Psyche, but we know that reading isn't true. I don't hate Laura as much as other Silent Hill 2 lovers do, but I do agree that she is the weakest part of the game, which many consider to be this game a masterpiece, because other than acting as a symbol for good and innocence in the game, she doesn't have any sense of agency on her own. Unlike the other characters who grow and change when you're not around them, Laura stays the same, and only appears when James needs to grow as a character. And this isn't even unique to Silent Hill. Virtue's Last Reward has Quark, Resident Evil Code Veronica has Steve, and Jurassic Park has most of their children characters. It's a real problem when you look at some of these stories, and if you take the children out, then the plot is more or less the same. And once again, it's because there's a lack of agency within these children. There's no sense of self within them. There's merely extensions of the adult characters they're attached to. But thankfully this isn't always the case, because as I mentioned, I just played Telltale's Walking Dead's final season. And boy oh boy, is it good. To start off, Clementine is already distinguished. For as much as I enjoy it, most of the boys grow in similar ways. And that's a problem when the film with its large ensemble cast is attempting to capture a universal truth about maturing and showcasing lots of kids. But the problem is the film can't capture that universal because the specific maturing they undergo relates to middle-class, young, white American boys. Save for maybe Bev and Mike. And that's not everyone. But that isn't the case with Clementine, because Clementine is effectively a black teenage mom who's struggling to make ends meet for her son AJ in the zombie apocalypse. And that's not generic. Maybe it doesn't have the fake guise of a universal truth about growing up, but the story and player have a clear picture of who Clementine is as a character and what maturing looks like to her. It allows the broad coming-of-age story to be narrowed down in a very specific type of character, a child who needs to be the perfect role model for her son while still growing up and learning about the world herself. Clementine may be mature for her age, but the episode does do work to put her in situations that make her feel a lot like a kid. Her playing Truth or Truth with the new kids, them asking if she's ever had a crush before, and her gossiping with friends on the fish trip. She's a kid who then also has to deal with the child lashing out against the world around him, making sure he's fed and playing nicely with other kids. Clementine's experience growing up is so recognizable and foreign at the same time that it makes for such an engaging discovery of not only growing up, but what it means for Clementine to truly understand herself. And she's not the only one coping with this differing experience. Brody deals with a crushing anxiety attacks, Violet deals with the loss of her girlfriend, and Lewis now struggles with his best friend Marlon being the source of all their problems. And all their problems are expressed and handled with the subtle pettiness yet sincerity that matches their immature yet vulnerable frames of mind. Even the antagonist Marlon, after he's killed Brody and revealed to have caused the death of 2 other members, never loses the childlike mind. He runs away and panics with this shockingly authentic performance by both his voice actor and animators that perfectly mirrors a small child caught in their mistake with no concept of how to cope with it. Unlike villains in the past with carefully constructed deceit, Marlon cannot lie, and his guilt is so obvious to everyone. In a way that is heartbreaking, but also infuriating. I was so conflicted on him, but then he's killed and it feels like a shame, which speaks so much to the amount of thought they put into understanding these group of kids. And it should be noted, during the very scene, Lewis says, "This is how adults act. It isn't us." Which, in tandem with how it ends, leaves you with this horrible despair and fear of growing up. It's great. It's a good story. Or basically, to tie things all together, kids just have too many emotions for their little bodies, and they deserve equal attention and thought as any other literary character. But that's all I got for today. So if you like this, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. Or share this with your friends, and I'll see you next time.